Imagine standing on the shore of a vast, uncharted ocean thousands of years ago. No maps, no satellites, just the endless horizon stretching into the unknown. Yet against all odds, ancient civilizations built ships so advanced, so daring, they crossed seas and connected continents, shaping the course of history itself. These weren't just boats, they were floating marvels of engineering, vessels that carried empires to glory, explorers to new worlds, and secrets we're still unraveling today. From the sun-baked docks of Phoenicia to the misty fjords of Scandinavia, these ships were the lifeblood of trade, war, and discovery, silent witnesses to humanity's unshakable thirst for adventure. What if I told you some of these ancient ships defied the limits of their time? Picture a vessel so massive it could carry hundreds of soldiers and a herd of elephants across the Mediterranean. Or a fragile-looking reed boat that somehow sailed thousands of miles, proving skeptics wrong centuries later. These stories aren't just footnotes in history, they're testaments to human ingenuity, to the boldness of cultures that looked at the open water and saw not a barrier but a doorway. And the most astonishing part, many of these ships were lost to time, their tales buried in shipwrecks or whispered in half-forgotten texts until now. That's why today we're setting sail on a journey through 35 of the most extraordinary ancient ships ever built. We'll uncover the hidden truths behind their designs, the daring voyages they undertook, and the legacies they left behind. Some were floating palaces, others humble fishing boats turned legendary, but each one has a story that will leave you in awe. So grab your compass and join me as we dive into the mysteries of these seafaring wonders. Trust me, by the end of this voyage, you'll never look at the ancient world or the sea the same way again. Buried in a sealed pit beside the Great Pyramid for over 4,500 years, the Khufu Ship is one of the most astonishing maritime relics ever uncovered. Discovered in 1954 near the southern face of the pyramid, this ancient Egyptian vessel wasn't built for the Nile's calm waters. It was a solar barge, a sacred craft meant to carry Pharaoh Khufu into the afterlife. Picture this, 143 feet of meticulously assembled cedar planks, held together not by nails or metal, but by ropes and wooden pegs, a technique so precise that the ship remained intact millennia later. But here's what's truly fascinating. The Khufu Ship wasn't just a symbolic grave good, it was a fully functional vessel, capable of sailing despite its ceremonial purpose. Some researchers believe it might have even transported Khufu's body during his funeral procession, gliding along the Nile as part of an elaborate ritual. Others argue its design mirrors the mythical boats of the sun god Ra, suggesting the pharaoh would use it to journey across the sky in the afterlife. And yet, when archaeologists first reassembled its 1,200 pieces, they found signs of wear on the hull, hinting it had been used in water before burial. Was it a real ship repurposed for the afterlife or built solely for the tomb? The debate still rages. The craftsmanship alone is staggering. Each plank was carved to fit perfectly, with seams so tight they didn't even require caulking. The oars, still preserved, were designed not for rowing but for symbolic steering because in death, the pharaoh wouldn't need mortal hands to guide him. Even the ropes woven from hafa grass survived the ages, a testament to Egypt's mastery of materials. Today, the ship rests in a museum near the pyramid, a silent witness to the ingenuity of a civilization that saw boats not just as tools but as bridges between worlds. Now let's voyage further back in time, 1,300 years before the Common Era, to a ship that wasn't just carrying cargo but rewriting history. Off the rugged coast of Turkey lies the Uluburun Shipwreck, a Bronze Age merchant vessel so perfectly preserved it's like a time capsule from the ancient world. Imagine this, a wooden hull shattered on the seafloor, but its treasures intact, 10 tons of precious metals, exotic spices, even glass ingots, all whispering secrets of a global trade network far more advanced than we ever imagined. This wasn't just any trading ship. The Uluburun was a floating marketplace, its hold packed with goods from at least 7 different civilizations. Copper ingots from Cyprus, tin from as far as Afghanistan, amber from the Baltic, and ebony from Egypt, proof that 3,000 years ago the Mediterranean was a highway connecting empires. But the real jaw-dropper, a gold scarab inscribed with the name of Nefertiti, suggesting royal cargo or even diplomatic gifts. Was this ship a royal envoy or a merchant's gamble to traffic in the luxuries of kings? What's astonishing is the craftsmanship. The ship itself was built with planks stitched together using wooden pegs and ropes, a technique seen from Egypt to the Aegean. But here's the twist. Analysis of the wood revealed it came from Lebanon, while the anchors were carved in Cyprus. This ship wasn't just carrying goods, it was a patchwork of cultures, a microcosm of the interconnected Bronze Age world. And then there's the human story. Among the wreckage, archaeologists found personal items, a bronze dagger, a stone weight, even a wooden writing tablet. These weren't just anonymous traders, they were individuals with names, stories, and perhaps dreams of wealth. One theory suggests the ship's crew was multicultural, a blend of Mycenaeans, Canaanites, and Egyptians working side by side. The Uluburun's sinking was a tragedy for its crew, but a gift to history. Its cargo reveals a world where borders were fluid, where a single ship could link pharaohs, emperors, and artisans across continents. This wreck doesn't just show us what they traded, it shows us how they lived, bridging divides we once thought insurmountable. Slicing through the waves nearly 2,300 years ago, the Kyrenia ship was the workhorse of its era, a humble Greek merchant vessel that met its end not in some grand naval battle, but through the quiet tragedy of a leaking hull. Rediscovered off the coast of Cyprus in 1965, this ship is a time machine, offering us the clearest snapshot we've ever had of Hellenistic trade. Unlike ceremonial barges or warships, the Kyrenia was built for one purpose: to haul goods across the Mediterranean, its wooden bones creaking under the weight of nearly 400 amphorae, each one packed with almonds, wine, or olive oil. What makes this wreck extraordinary isn't just its age, but its almost miraculous preservation. The ship's skeleton, oak keel, pine planks, and all was so intact that archaeologists could reconstruct its entire life story. The wood bore scars from repeated repairs, hinting at decades of hard service. One plank even showed a crude patch job, likely a quick fix by a crew desperate to keep their livelihood afloat. And then there were the millstones, nestled among the cargo like forgotten paperweights. These weren't just ballast, they were bread-making tools, suggesting the crew baked fresh meals on board during their months at sea. But the real treasure, the personal artifacts, a wooden spoon, a bronze coin, and even a solitary sandal, each one a whisper from the past. The ship's small size, just 47 feet long, meant its crew probably numbered 4 or 5, living elbow to elbow between crates of cargo. Imagine them, sunburnt and salt-crusted, trading jokes in Greek as they dipped their spoons into a shared pot of lentils. The coin, minted under Alexander the Great's successors, dates the wreck to around 300 BCE, a time when Greek culture stretched from Egypt to India. Most poignant of all were the almonds, thousands of them perfectly preserved in their jars. Scientists analyzing the wreck found that some had been nibbled likely by sailors snacking during the voyage. It's these tiny, human details that transform the Kyrenia from an archaeological specimen into a living story. This wasn't just a ship, it was someone's workplace, their home, their gamble against the unpredictable sea. Today, the reconstructed vessel sits in a Cyprus museum, its patched hull a testament to resilience. While pharaohs and emperors dominate history books, the Kyrenia reminds us of the ordinary people who kept the ancient world running, one cargo run at a time. Buried in the peat bogs of southern Denmark for over 1,600 years, the Nanhai boat isn't just a ship, it's a ghost of the Iron Age, a relic of a time when Europe's northern tribes waged war beneath storm-darkened skies. Unearthed in 1863, this clinker-built oak vessel stretches 76 feet long, its overlapping planks fastened with iron nails, a design so sturdy it could slice through the choppy waters of the Baltic. But this wasn't a trader or a fisher's craft. Everything about the Nidam boat whispers of battle. The worn grooves where shields once lined its sides, the traces of weapons recovered nearby, even the way it was deliberately sunk in the bog, a grim offering to the gods of war. Picture the scene, a chieftain standing on the shore, watching as this warship loaded with swords, spears, and shattered shields is pushed into the murky water, swallowed by the earth as a sacrifice. Archaeologists found not one but 3 vessels in the Nidam bog, each sunk centuries apart, suggesting this was no accident but a ritual repeated across generations. The boat we see today is the largest and best preserved, its oak timbers stained dark by centuries in the peat. But here's what chills the bones. Dendrochronology dates its wood to around 310 AD, a time when Germanic tribes like the Angles and Saxons were clashing with Rome's legions, and soon they'd turn these very ship designs into the tools of Viking raids. The craftsmanship is raw but brutally effective. Unlike later Viking ships, the Nidam boat had no sail, just 15 pairs of oars, meaning a crew of 30 men could row it silently upriver for ambushes. Its shallow draft let it glide onto beaches perfect for lightning raids, but the most haunting detail, human bones mixed with the weapons in the bog. Were these fallen warriors, their bodies given to the water alongside their ship, or captives sacrificed to seal the offering? What truly sets the Nidam boat apart is its role as a bridge between eras. Its clinker-style planks overlapping like scales would evolve into the iconic Viking longship. The ritual sinking mirrors Norse legends of sending chieftains to Valhalla in burning boats. This vessel isn't just a relic, it's a missing link showing how the seafaring violence of the Vikings was born in the bogs of Denmark, where tribes once prayed with steel and oak. Today, its dark silhouette looms in a German museum, a shadow of the northern world's warrior past. Emerging from the muddy banks of the Dover River in 1992, the Dover Bronze Age boat isn't just a relic, it's a puzzle carved in oak. At over 3,500 years old, this vessel rewrote history, proving that Britain's prehistoric mariners weren't just coastal paddlers but daring seafarers. Picture this, a boat stitched together like fabric, its planks held not with nails or pegs but with twisted yew fibers, a technique so alien to modern eyes it left archaeologists baffled for years. What makes this boat extraordinary isn't just its age but its audacious design. Stretching 30 feet long, the Dover boat was built for open water, its hull curved like a crescent moon to slice through rough channel waves. The builders used massive oak logs hollowed and shaped with stone tools, then sewn side by side with ropes made of yew, a method so labor-intensive it would have taken months. But here's the genius, the stitching wasn't just binding, it allowed the planks to flex with the waves, making the hull shockingly resilient. The real revelation came when researchers tested replicas. Despite its fragile appearance, the sewn plank design could handle voyages across the English Channel, challenging the long-held belief that Bronze Age Europeans stuck to rivers. Traces of caulking, a mix of beeswax and animal fat, prove the builders understood watertight seals. And then there's the cargo capacity, up to 2 tons, enough for metal ingots, livestock, or even passengers. Was this a trader's workhorse ferrying tin between Britain and Europe, or a ceremonial craft, its strange construction hinting at rituals lost to time? Personal touches haunt the wreck. Tool marks show where adzes painstakingly shaped each plank, while grooves in the wood suggest repairs, proof this boat saw years of hard use. Most poignant, a child's footprint preserved in the clay beside the wreck. Did a curious youngster scramble aboard during construction, leaving a fleeting mark millennia before archaeologists would find it? Today, the Dover boat forces us to rethink prehistoric Europe. Its existence hints at a network of maritime trade long before the Romans, where knowledge of sewn plank construction spread across the Atlantic coasts. This wasn't just a boat, it was a blueprint showing how Bronze Age minds turned trees into bridges between worlds. Battered by centuries of Mediterranean storms and buried beneath layers of sand, the Mag and Michael ship emerged from obscurity in a most unexpected way, discovered not by archaeologists but by a scuba diver in 1985, just a few hundred yards off Israel's coast. This isn't just another ancient wreck, it's a cultural melting pot, a vessel frozen in time from the 5th century BC that defies simple categorization. Built with a hull that borrows Phoenician curves and Greek reinforcements, this ship is a testament to an era when borders blurred at sea, and craftsmanship traveled as freely as the merchants who depended on it. What makes this ship extraordinary is its hybrid DNA. The framing follows classic Greek methods, mortise and tenon joints locking planks together like a wooden puzzle, yet the hull's graceful lines echo Phoenician designs perfected by the master shipwrights of Sidon and Tyre. Even the cargo tells a story of cultural exchange. Amphorae from Greece filled with olive oil, jars from Egypt still caked with resin, and Phoenician pottery stacked beside fishing weights carved from local stone. This wasn't just a trader, it was a floating bazaar, a snapshot of the interconnected Mediterranean economy at work. But here's the twist, the Mag and Michael ship wasn't built for open sea heroics. Its shallow draft and compact size, just 40 feet long, suggest it hugged the coast, hopping from port to port like an ancient cargo van. Archaeologists found remnants of its last meal on board, fish bones and olive pits hinting at a crew who ate what they caught. And then there's the repair work, patches of mismatched wood hastily nailed over weak spots. This ship wasn't a royal jewel, it was a workhorse kept alive through ingenuity and necessity. The most haunting discovery, a single sandal preserved in the silt. Was it lost in a storm or left behind when the ship sank? Unlike the grand ceremonial vessels of pharaohs or the warships of kings, the Mag and Michael whispers of ordinary lives, the calloused hands that hauled its ropes, the merchants who haggled over its cargo, the families who depended on its safe return. Today, its meticulously reconstructed hull sits in a Haifa museum, a tribute not to empires but to the unsung sailors who stitched the ancient world together, one coastal voyage at a time. Buried beneath a mound of blue clay in Norway's Oseberg farm, the Oseberg ship isn't just a Viking vessel, it's a floating tomb, a grand funeral procession frozen in time for over 1,200 years. Discovered in 1903, this 70-foot-long masterpiece of oak and artistry was more than transportation. It was a gateway to the afterlife for two women of immense status, their identities shrouded in as much mystery as the swirling dragon heads carved into its prow. Step aboard this ship, and you're stepping into a Viking queen's final journey. The craftsmanship is staggering, every inch of the hull adorned with sinuous carvings of beasts and gods, interlacing in the same hypnotic patterns found in the finest Norse jewelry. But it's the burial chamber that steals the breath. The older of the two women, likely in her 70s or 80s, was laid to rest with a trove of opulence, elaborately woven tapestries, a carved wooden cart, even feather-stuffed bedding. The younger woman, around 50, wore a belt of silk and gold thread, hinting at connections to trade networks stretching as far as Byzantium. Were they mother and daughter? A priestess and her acolyte, the answer died with them, but the grave goods scream one truth. These were women of power. What fascinates archaeologists isn't just the ship's beauty, but its paradoxes. Despite its ceremonial role, the Oseberg ship was fully seaworthy, with a shallow draft perfect for fjord navigation. Yet the mast step, the socket where the mast would be secured, shows nowhere. This ship never sailed. Was it built specifically for the burial, its ocean-going potential sacrificed for the afterlife? Or was it a retired vessel repurposed for this final voyage? Then there's the violence lurking beneath the splendor. The younger woman's collarbone bears a deep cut, possibly from a ritual knife. Was her death voluntary, a companion joining her mistress into the next world? Or something darker? The Oseberg burial forces us to confront the Vikings' duality, their reverence for art and their embrace of the grim. Today, the ship's restored form dominates Oslo's Viking Ship Museum, its serpentine prow still radiating menace and majesty. But perhaps its greatest legacy is how it upends stereotypes. This wasn't just a warrior's culture, it was a world where women could command respect and ships worthy of kings. If the Oseberg ship was a floating work of art, then the Gokstad was its battle-hardened cousin, a vessel built not for ceremony but for conquest. Unearthed in 1880 in a Norwegian burial mound, this 76-foot-long longship from the 9th century is the very definition of Viking prowess, its oak hull weathered by salt and scars. Unlike the untouched Oseberg, the Gokstad shows signs of a life lived at sea: patched planks, worn oar holes, and a keel reinforced for rough waves. This wasn't just a tomb, it was a warrior's steed buried with him for the raids of the afterlife. Picture the difference: where Oseberg's curves whisper of artistry, Gokstad's lines scream efficiency. Its design is a masterclass in naval engineering, shallow enough to glide up rivers for surprise attacks, yet sturdy enough to cross the North Atlantic. Tests with modern replicas prove it could hit speeds of 12 knots under sail, faster than most ships of its era. And with 32 oar holes, it could switch to silent rowing in an instant, perfect for sneaking up on coastal villages. But the real genius lies in its flexibility. The mast could be raised or lowered in minutes, allowing it to dart under bridges or flee sudden storms. This wasn't just a ship, it was a predator. The burial tells its own brutal story. A man in his 40s, likely a chieftain, was laid to rest aboard, surrounded by weapons, swords, axes, even a gaming set carved with war scenes. His skeleton showed old battle wounds, including a healed leg fracture that would have left him limping. Yet here's the twist: forensic analysis revealed he didn't die in combat. His bones tell a darker tale, signs of infection and malnutrition, suggesting he was weakened before being ritually executed to join the ship in death. Was this a fallen leader, sacrificed to secure his passage to Valhalla? What sets the Gokstad apart is its legacy of survival. While Oseberg's delicate carvings rot behind glass, replicas of this ship have sailed across oceans, proving its design was centuries ahead of its time. In 1893, a near-perfect copy crossed the Atlantic to Chicago's World Fair, battling storms without a single leak. Even today, its blueprint lives on in modern boats, a testament to the Vikings' uncanny understanding of the sea. The Gokstad wasn't just a relic, it was a revolution cloaked in the guise of a tomb. Buried in the mud of Roskilde Fjord for nearly 1,000 years, the gargantuan timbers of Roskilde 6 didn't just rewrite Viking history, they shattered it. Discovered in 1997 during a harbor expansion, this isn't just another longship, it's a staggering 120 feet of oak and ambition, the largest Viking vessel ever unearthed. Picture the scene: archaeologists brushing away centuries of silt to reveal a keel so massive, it dwarfed even the legendary Gokstad and Oseberg ships. This wasn't built for coastal raids or funeral pyres, it was a seaborne fortress, capable of carrying 80 warriors across open ocean with terrifying speed. What sets Roskilde 6 apart isn't just its size, but what it reveals about the Vikings' naval ambitions. Dendrochronology dates its construction to around 1025 AD, a time when Danish kings like Signe the Great ruled a North Sea empire stretching from England to Norway. This ship wasn't cobbled together by local chieftains. Its precision-cut planks and iron rivets suggest a royal workshop, funded by a ruler who needed to project power across waves. Unlike earlier longships designed for stealth, Roskilde 6's proportions scream calculated intimidation, a floating declaration that its owner could deploy an army anywhere, anytime. The engineering is breathtaking. The keel alone is a masterstroke carved from a single oak trunk nearly 80 feet long, a tree that would have taken 3 centuries to grow. Its T-shaped cross-section gave unprecedented stability in rough seas, while the hull's slight upward curve at bow and stern allowed it to ride over waves rather than plow through them. Replicas suggest it could sail at 15 knots even when fully loaded, outpacing most medieval ships by a crushing margin. But here's the twist. Analysis of tool marks shows the wood was still green when shaped, meaning builders felled the trees in winter, then raced to construct the ship before the timber dried. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was a high-stakes logistical feat. Then there's the haunting mystery of its fate. Roskilde 6 was deliberately scuttled, its hull stacked like firewood alongside 5 smaller ships to create a defensive barrier across the fjord. Was this a desperate act against invaders, or a king retiring his flagship to protect his heartland? The timbers show signs of battle damage, axe cuts near the waterline, possibly from a failed attack. Perhaps this giant didn't fall to nature, but to treachery. Today, its reconstructed skeleton looms over Roskilde's Viking ship museum, a spectral reminder that the Norse didn't just raid and trade, they engineered dominance on a scale that still stuns us. Roskilde 6 forces us to rethink everything. If ships this massive existed, what other leviathans might still lie hidden beneath Scandinavia's waters? In the quiet harbor mud of Fujian province, the Khufu ship lay hidden for 7 centuries, a silent witness to an era when China's Song dynasty ruled the waves. Unearthed in 1973, this 70-foot-long junk isn't just a shipwreck. It's a technological manifesto, a floating testament to the ingenuity that made Chinese sailors the undisputed masters of the medieval seas. Picture this, a hull divided into 12 watertight compartments by cedar bulkheads, a revolutionary design that kept the vessel afloat even if one section flooded. Europeans wouldn't adopt this innovation for another 500 years, yet here it was, perfected by Song dynasty engineers long before Marco Polo ever set foot in China. The Khufu's secrets go far beyond its architecture. Buried beneath layers of silt, archaeologists found a cargo hold packed with contradictions, precious spices from Southeast Asia, nestled beside humble pottery, elephant tusks alongside everyday cooking utensils. This wasn't a royal envoy or a military vessel. It was a working merchant ship, the tractor-trailer of its day, hauling both luxuries and necessities along the Maritime Silk Road. But the real headline was the sheer diversity of its origins. Pepper from Java, sandalwood from Timor, glassware from Persia, every artifact a thread in the vast web of trade that stretched from the South China Sea to the Indian Ocean. What truly sets this ship apart are the human touches etched into its timbers. Chinese coins drilled with holes, likely sewn into a sailor's clothing for safekeeping. Charred remains of a cooking area where crews prepared rice and fish during months at sea. Most poignant, a ceramic figurine of the goddess Mazu, protector of sailors, found near the stern, someone's desperate prayer against storms, pirates, or loneliness. These weren't faceless merchants, they were fathers, brothers, and sons gambling against the capricious sea. The Khufu's design reveals a maritime culture light years ahead of its time. Its keel wasn't a single timber but 3 expertly joined sections, allowing flexibility in rough seas. The rudder could be raised or lowered depending on depth, a feature European ships wouldn't match until the Renaissance. And then there's the mast. Analysis of the step shows it once supported a sail woven from bamboo and palm fiber, a material so durable it could withstand typhoons that would shred canvas. Today, the ship's reconstructed hull sits in a Khufu museum, its ribs curving like the bones of some ancient sea dragon. But its legacy is even grander, proof that while Europe slept through the Dark Ages, China's sailors were building the blueprint for global trade, one storm-defying junk at a time. Beneath the turquoise waters of Indonesia's Belitung Island lies a shipwreck that rewrote history, a 9th-century Arab How, its hull packed tight with treasures from Tang Dynasty China. Discovered by local fishermen in 1998, this 60-foot vessel isn't just another sunken relic. It's a smoking gun, proving that a direct maritime Silk Road connected the Arab world and China 400 years before Marco Polo's famous journey. Imagine the scene. A storm strikes somewhere near the Java Sea, sending this sturdy sewn plank ship built with coconut fiber ropes and wooden pegs to the seabed where it would guard its secrets for over a millennium. What makes the Uluburun Shipwreck extraordinary isn't just its age, but its cargo, a staggering 60,000 artifacts, most untouched since the day they sank. Among the sand-encrusted hold lay golden cups, silver boxes, and most astonishingly, over 57,000 glazed ceramic bowls, plates, and ewers, all mass-produced in Chinese kilns specifically for Middle Eastern tastes. These weren't random trade goods, they were custom orders painted with cobalt blue patterns mimicking Arab calligraphy, proof that Chinese potters tailored their work for customers 7,000 miles away. The sheer volume suggests this wasn't a routine trip. It was a commercial superfreighter of its day, possibly funded by Baghdad's wealthy Abbasid caliphs. The ship itself is a marvel of cultural fusion. Built with techniques from Oman or Yemen, its planks sewn together with coconut fiber, a method still used by Arabian dhow builders today, yet carrying a crew that likely included Persians, Indians, and Chinese. A single bronze mirror engraved with Taoist symbols was found among navigational tools bearing Arabic inscriptions, hinting at a multicultural crew exchanging beliefs along with goods. Even the personal items tell stories: a inkstone for writing Chinese characters, a chess piece carved in the Persian style, and tiny glass perfume bottles that once held fragrances coveted from Guangzhou to Basra. But here's what flips historical assumptions on their head. Among the ceramics, archaeologists found an extraordinary piece, a blue and white porcelain flask decorated with lotus motifs. For centuries, experts believed such blue-glazed porcelain only emerged in the 14th century under China's Yuan dynasty. The Uluburun wreck pushes that timeline back 500 years, revealing an artistic exchange between Chinese potters and Persian cobalt miners far earlier than imagined. This wasn't just trade, it was a dialogue of aesthetics crossing continents. The wreck also exposes the brutal realities of ancient maritime commerce. The ship's timbers show signs of hasty repairs, patches of mismatched wood nailed over weak spots. Some ceramics were packed in straw, others crammed raw against each other, suggesting a frantic loading process. Most chilling, human remains found near the stern, possibly a sailor who clung to the wreckage as it went down. Today, the Uluburun's treasures are displayed in Singapore, a glittering testament to globalization's ancient roots. This ship forces us to rethink everything, not just the timeline of East-West trade, but the intimacy of that connection. Every bowl salvaged from the seabed carries whispers of a world where Arab merchants knew exactly which shade of blue would sell in Baghdad's bazaars, and Chinese artisans adjusted their kilns to suit foreign tastes. Long before the age of empires, this humble dhow was stitching continents together, one ceramic plate at a time. Buried under 60 feet of seawater for more than 800 years, the Nanhai No is more than just a shipwreck. It's a perfectly preserved window into the golden age of China's maritime Silk Road. Discovered by chance in 1987 off the coast of Guangdong, this Southern Song Dynasty merchant vessel was so intact, archaeologists could still smell the faint scent of cloves lingering in its cargo hold when it was finally raised in 2007. Imagine lifting a 3,000-ton time capsule from the ocean floor, its wooden ribs cradling over 80,000 artifacts, porcelain so delicate it glowed under the water, iron ingots still stacked like bricks, and gold jewelry so finely crafted it could rival modern pieces. What makes the Nanhai No extraordinary isn't just the scale of its treasures, but the story they tell about a world connected by water. This ship wasn't just carrying goods, it was a floating department store, its hold meticulously packed with products bound for markets from Southeast Asia to the Middle East. Stacked in layers like a carefully organized warehouse were celadon plates from Lonquin kilns, their jade-green glaze untouched by centuries under the sea, and Qingbai porcelain from Jingdezhen, so thin it's nearly translucent. But here's the twist. Mixed in with these luxury items were everyday wares, coarse pottery, farming tools, even preserved fruit seeds, proof that the maritime Silk Road wasn't just for elites. It fed, clothed, and supplied ordinary people across continents. The ship itself is a marvel of Song Dynasty engineering. Built from fragrant camphor wood, its hull was reinforced with iron nails and waterproofed using a paste of lime and tung oil, a technique that kept it seaworthy for decades. Unlike the Quanju ship's bulkheads, the Nanhai No's cargo was secured with bamboo matting and straw, revealing a different approach to maritime logistics. But the real revelation came from its personal artifacts. A sailor's inkstone, etched with poetry fragments, suggests literacy among the crew. Bronze coins strung together with silk threads hint at a makeshift payroll system. And then there's the cookware, a charcoal stove still caked with soot, its last meal likely a simple stew of fish and rice. Most haunting are the clues to the ship's final moments. The cargo shows no signs of panic or disorder. Everything was stowed properly, suggesting the sinking was sudden, perhaps a rogue wave or a catastrophic leak. Dendrochronology dates the wood to around 1260 AD, a time when the southern Song dynasty was crumbling under Mongol invasion. Was this vessel part of a desperate exodus, fleeing inland turmoil for the promise of overseas trade, or a routine voyage caught in nature's crosshairs? Today, the Nanhai No rests in a custom-built Crystal Palace museum, its seawater-filled tank preserving the wreck exactly as it was found, but its legacy ripples far wider. This ship forces us to rethink the maritime Silk Road not as a romanticized network of spices and silks, but as a gritty, practical lifeline, one where porcelain and poetry sailed alongside fish sauce and farming hose, binding the medieval world together in ways we're only beginning to understand. Off the coast of Java, where the Java Sea meets the Indian Ocean, the Intan Shipwreck tells a story of wealth, ambition, and catastrophe frozen in time. Sometime in the 10th century, this Indonesian trader, packed to the brim with treasures from across Asia, vanished beneath the waves, only to resurface 1,000 years later as one of the most revealing maritime time capsules of the medieval world. Discovered in 1997 by local fishermen, the wreck wasn't just another sunken vessel. It was a ledger of the Srivijaya Empire's golden age, a thalassocracy so powerful it controlled the Malacca Strait, the choke point of global trade centuries before Europeans even dreamed of sea routes to the east. What makes the Intan Shipwreck extraordinary is its cargo, a kaleidoscope of luxury and practicality. Bronze mirrors from China, their surfaces still polished enough to catch the light after a millennium underwater. Gold ingots stamped with mysterious seals, possibly from Sumatran workshops. Even blocks of raw tin, mined from Malaysia's jungles, ready to be forged into ceremonial objects or coinage. But it's the smaller items that pull you into the daily rhythm of 10th century trade. Glass beads from the Middle East, their colors still vibrant, likely destined for aristocratic jewelry. Iron hose, simple and unadorned, proof that this ship supplied farmers as well as kings. And then there's the spices, cloves and pepper, their scent long faded but their presence a silent testament to the addictive flavors that drove empires to cross oceans. The ship itself was a masterpiece of Srivijayan craftsmanship, built from tropical hardwoods resistant to worms and rot. Its planks were fastened with wooden dowels in a technique borrowed from Javanese shipwrights. Unlike the stitched plank boats of earlier eras, this vessel's robust design could handle monsoons and pirate attacks alike. But here's the twist: nestled among the cargo, archaeologists found Buddhist ritual items. A bronze bell, a small stupa, suggesting the crew practiced their faith on board, blending commerce and spirituality in a way unique to Southeast Asia's maritime culture. Perhaps the most haunting discovery was the human element, a single ceramic jug, its rim chipped from repeated use, likely a sailor's drinking vessel. A whetstone grooved from sharpening knives, speaking to years of meal prep under the stars. And then there were the coins, thousands of them, from Chinese cash to silver dirhams, a floating bank that connected economies from Baghdad to Guangzhou. The mix of currencies hints at a sophisticated barter system, where traders calculated value on the fly across linguistic and cultural divides. The Intan's sinking remains a mystery. No signs of fire or battle damage, just a hull shattered by time. Some speculate it fell victim to a sudden squall, its heavy cargo dragging it down before the crew could react. Others wonder if overloading played a role, greed literally sinking ambition. But what's undeniable is its legacy. This ship didn't just carry goods, it carried ideas, faiths, and technologies, stitching together a world far more connected than we often assume. Today, its artifacts displayed in Singapore and Jakarta whisper of an era when Java was the crossroads of the world, and the sea was not a barrier but a highway. 50 miles south of Bangkok, hidden beneath the muddy shallows of the Gulf of Thailand, the Phantom Surin shipwreck waited silently for 12 centuries until a fisherman's net snagged on something far more precious than fish. What emerged from the depths wasn't just a ship but a floating shrine, its hull crammed with ritual objects that blur the line between commerce and devotion. This 9th century Thai Mon trading vessel, built from teak and held together with coconut fiber lashings, carried no ordinary cargo. Instead of spices or silks, its hold was packed with bronze Buddha statues, ceremonial bells, and stacks of lead tablets etched with ancient Mon script, sacred items destined not for market stalls but for temples across Southeast Asia. The Phantom Surin isn't just a shipwreck, it's a Rosetta Stone for understanding the Devaravati culture, a Buddhist kingdom that thrived in central Thailand long before the rise of Ayutthaya. Every artifact tells a story of spiritual entrepreneurship. Take the miniature stupas barely taller than a handspan, each one molded from clay and wrapped in gold leaf. These weren't mere decorations, they were devotional objects mass-produced for pilgrims and monks, suggesting a religious economy where faith and trade sailed hand in hand. Then there's the bronze-seated Buddha, its right hand in the Bhumispasha mudra, the gesture of touching the earth, a style so distinctively Devaravati that scholars can trace its influence across the Mekong Delta. But here's what's truly groundbreaking, the lead tablets. Scratched with prayers in Old Mon language, these folded metal sheets were likely votive offerings, meant to be buried near sacred sites. Their presence on board reveals a network of religious exchange far more extensive than historians once believed. This wasn't just a merchant ship, it was a floating sangha, carrying the literal words of Buddhism to distant shores. The mix of Mon and Khmer script on the tablets hints at a crew, or clientele fluent in multiple cultures, navigating both spiritual and linguistic currents. The ship's construction speaks volumes about Devaravati's maritime prowess. Unlike the stitched plank boats of earlier eras, this vessel used a hybrid technique, teak planks joined with wooden dowels reinforced by lashed ribs, a design sturdy enough for monsoon winds yet flexible in rough seas. Tool marks on the timbers suggest the work of specialized shipwrights, not amateur builders, while traces of resin in the seams reveal an understanding of waterproofing. But the most haunting detail, a small, charred area near the stern, evidence of an onboard shrine where sailors might have lit incense to Mazu or local sea spirits, blending Buddhist piety with older animist traditions. Personal touches humanize this ancient voyage. A set of fishing weights worn smooth from use suggests crews supplemented their rations at sea. A broken ceramic kendi or ritual water vessel might have been used for ablutions before prayers. And then there's the mystery of the ship's demise. No signs of fire or battle, just a hull cracked open on a reef, its sacred cargo swallowed by the waves mid-journey. Was it a storm or something more mundane, a distracted helmsman, a snapped rudder? Today, the Phantom Surin's artifacts fill Bangkok's National Museum, but their legacy ripples wider. This wreck forces us to rethink ancient trade routes as more than just conduits for goods. They were highways for ideas, where faith could be packed as carefully as any spice. Every statue recovered from the silt whispers the same truth. Commerce built kingdoms, but spirituality built connections that outlasted empires. Bobbing in the shallow waters of the Philippines' Busuanga Island, the Lena Shoal Junk doesn't just sit on the ocean floor. It sprawls across history like a spilled treasure chest. Discovered in 1997, this 15th-century vessel is a floating puzzle, its shattered hull cradling cargo from three distinct empires: Vietnamese celadon, Thai stoneware, and Chinese blue and white porcelain. But here's what makes this wreck extraordinary. It wasn't just carrying goods, it was smuggling cultural DNA, proof that Southeast Asia's waters were the original melting pot, centuries before the term existed. Picture the scene: a modest junk, perhaps 40 feet long, its wooden bones creaking under the weight of thousands of ceramics. Vietnamese rice bowls, their pale green glaze as delicate as lily pads, stacked beside Thai storage jars, their bulbous bodies painted with fish scales. And then there's the piece de resistance Chinese porcelain adorned with cobalt peonies, each brushstroke a testament to the Ming Dynasty's artistic zenith. This wasn't a haphazard load, it was a curated selection, tailored to the tastes of sultans and merchants from Malacca to Brunei. But the real story lies in the cracks, literally. Many of the ceramics show repairs, their broken edges drilled with tiny holes where metal staples once held them together. These weren't discarded seconds, they were valuables worth fixing, likely sold at discount to traders who cared more about function than perfection. A Thai jar even bears graffiti, a hastily scratched symbol that might be a merchant's mark or a buyer's initials. These are the receipts of globalization, scribbled in clay and glaze. The ship itself is a study in hybridity. Built with Chinese techniques, iron nails clinched over wooden planks but using tropical hardwoods from Philippine forests, suggesting local shipwrights collaborated with foreign traders. Its flat bottom hints at river travel, possibly navigating the labyrinthine deltas of Vietnam before braving the open sea. And then there's the anchor, carved from a single block of laterite stone, a material so porous it would have absorbed water and grown heavier over time, creating a self-regulating brake system. Most haunting are the personal touches: a Chinese coin pierced for wearing, perhaps a sailor's good luck charm; a Thai spoon, its handle worn smooth from years of stirring fish stew. These objects whisper of a crew as diverse as their cargo: Filipino helmsmen reading monsoon winds, Chinese merchants haggling over inventory, Thai cooks flavoring meals with tamarind and chili. The Lena Shoal Junk sinking remains a mystery. No signs of fire or battle, just a hull split open on a reef, its treasures spilling into the sand. But its legacy is crystal clear. Long before colonialism redrew maps, Southeast Asia was already the world's crossroads, its ships stitching together cultures with every wave they crossed. Today, its reassembled cargo gleams in Manila's museums, but its true lesson isn't in the porcelain. It's in the quiet truth that borders have always been fluid, and the sea has always been the greatest connector of all. The Santa Maria looms large in history books, but the truth about Columbus's flagship is far messier than the polished legend. This wasn't a cutting-edge vessel of exploration. It was a repurposed cargo ship, now designed to haul goods, not navigate uncharted waters. Imagine a floating warehouse, clunky, slow, and with a draft so deep it was practically begging to run aground. Modern reconstructions, like the one built for the 1992 quincentenary, spark fierce debate. Historians point out glaring inaccuracies: wrong sail shapes, misplaced deck layouts, turning these replicas into floating fantasies rather than faithful restorations. What's often overlooked are the ship's fatal design flaws. The Santa Maria's square sails made it reliant on tailwinds, forcing Columbus into inefficient zigzag courses that wasted precious weeks. Its single-deck left crews exposed to storms, while the lack of proper bilge pumps meant seawater sloshed ankle-deep below decks. Even the crew knew it was ill-suited for the journey. The ship's owner originally refused to sail on his own vessel, swapping to the nimbler Nina at the last minute. Then came Christmas Day, 1492. Drunk on holiday wine and complacency, the night watch let the Santa Maria drift onto a coral reef off Hispaniola. Panicked efforts to lighten the ship heaving cannons overboard, even cutting the mast, failed. As timbers splintered, Columbus made a calculated pivot. He used the wreck as leverage, leaving 40 men behind to build a settlement from its salvaged planks while he raced back to Spain on the Nina. That decision birthed La Navidad, Europe's first foothold in the New World, and became a grim preview of colonization's collateral damage. The Santa Maria's legacy isn't just one of discovery, but of hubris. Its bones still lie somewhere beneath Haiti's waters, a physical reminder that history's most famous ship was, in the end, as fragile as the myths that surround it. The Mary Rose didn't just sink, she died screaming. On July 19, 1545, England's most advanced warship vanished before thousands of horrified spectators, her gun ports still gaping open as the waves swallowed 500 men in minutes. Henry Roman VIII, watching from Southsea Castle, reportedly heard the crew's cries as the vessel, his pride and joy, rolled and vanished into the Solent's murky depths. For centuries, the Mary Rose became a ghost story until 1982, when marine archaeologists performed the maritime equivalent of raising Atlantis, hauling her shattered hull from the seabed with a cradle of steel and ambition. What emerged wasn't just a shipwreck, but a Tudor time capsule. The silt had preserved everyday objects with eerie intimacy. Leather shoes curled as if just kicked off, wooden bowls still bearing knife marks from half-eaten meals, even a skeleton nicknamed Henry, found pinned under a fallen gun carriage, his face forever turned toward the surface he'd never reach. These weren't artifacts, they were frozen moments. Among the most chilling finds, a chest of surgeons' tools, saws for amputations, syringes for draining wounds, proof that naval medicine in the 1500s was as brutal as the battles themselves. The Mary Rose was a revolution in naval warfare when launched in 1511. Built during the transition from medieval cogs to Renaissance galleons, she boasted innovations like gun ports cut into the hull, allowing heavier cannon fire. But here's the irony, that same cutting-edge design may have doomed her. Theories suggest the ship, overloaded with new guns and top-heavy from added decks, heeled too far during a sharp turn, her open gun ports flooding the lower decks. Some accounts claim the crew, panicking, rushed to one side, worsening the tilt, a deadly domino effect of human error and engineering limits. Yet the wreck's true treasure isn't its tragedy, but its testimony to Tudor life. The longbows recovered, over 160 of them rewrote military history. Their draw weights exceeded 100 pounds, shattering myths that medieval bows were weaker than guns. Similarly, the personal items, combs, dice, even a backgammon set reveal a crew far from the rough sailors of legend. One man carried a silver whistle, likely an officer's tool for issuing orders over battle noise. Another had a leather-bound book, though the sea had long since dissolved its words. Most haunting are the faces. Forensic reconstructions of crew skulls show men from across Europe, North Africans, possibly Moors, alongside Devon fishermen and London apprentices. Their bones tell stories of hardship, spinal damage from hauling ropes, arthritis from damp conditions, even tooth fractures from gnawing hardtack. This wasn't just a warship, it was a floating microcosm of Tudor society, where class and origin collapsed in shared service and shared doom. Today, the Mary Rose rests in Portsmouth's museum, her hull misted constantly to prevent decay. But her legacy isn't just maritime, it's human. Every warped plank and salt-crusted shoe whispers the same truth. History isn't made by kings and treaties alone, but by the calloused hands that built, sailed, and ultimately lost the vessels that shaped our world. On a calm August day in 1628, the Vasa, Sweden's most magnificent warship, embarked on her maiden voyage before a crowd of cheering spectators in Stockholm harbor. Just 20 minutes later, she lay at the bottom of the harbor, her towering masts jutting from the water like gravestones. This wasn't just a shipwreck, it was a catastrophic engineering failure, a symbol of ambition outpacing reality. Built under the orders of King Gustavus Adolphus to intimidate Sweden's enemies, the Vasa was a floating fortress, her hull adorned with 700 gilded and painted carvings of gods, lions, and mermaids. But beneath the Baroque grandeur lurked fatal flaws: an overly narrow hull, too many heavy cannons stacked high, and a design altered mid-construction to add even more firepower. When a gust of wind filled her sails that day, the Vasa heeled sharply, water poured through open gun ports, and the Baltic's icy embrace claimed her forever. What makes the Vasa extraordinary isn't just her dramatic demise, but her resurrection. Salvaged in 1961 after 3 centuries underwater, she's the world's best preserved 17th century ship, her timbers so intact that original paint still clings to the carvings. Stepping into Stockholm's Vasa Museum today is like walking onto a frozen moment in time. The ship's towering stern, nearly 50 feet tall, looms over visitors, every inch covered in intricate sculptures meant to proclaim Sweden's power: Hercules wrestling lions, cherubs brandishing swords, even a carved self-portrait of the shipwright peering out as if to say, "See what I built." Yet it's the mundane details that truly humanize this tragedy. Archaeologists found personal belongings scattered in the silt, a leather shoe tossed aside as its owner scrambled for life, a wooden tankard half full of beer, even the skeleton of a small dog, likely the ship's mascot. Most haunting are the remnants of the crew's last meals: salted pork still in barrels, dried peas spilled across the deck, ordinary items that turned into grave goods when the Vasa plunged 30 meters to the seafloor. The wreck also exposed the brutal realities of naval bureaucracy. Letters recovered from archives reveal how the king, impatient for his showpiece, ignored warnings about the ship's instability. A stability test where 30 sailors ran side to side to simulate rocking ended abruptly when the Vasa nearly capsized at the dock. But with war looming, no one dared tell Gustavus Adolphus his floating status symbol was a death trap. From her doomed construction to her museum rebirth, the Vasa's legacy is a study in contrasts. Her failure revolutionized naval architecture, forcing engineers to prioritize physics over pageantry. Yet her preservation offers unparalleled insight into Baroque craftsmanship, from the blacksmith's precise nail patterns to the carpenter's secret markings on planks. More than a ship, she's a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the grandest designs can founder on the rocks of hubris. The Batavia story begins not with a storm or a hidden reef, but with something far more terrifying: the darkness of human nature. In 1629, this Dutch East India Company ship set sail from Holland, packed with silver coins, jewels, and over 300 souls bound for the spice-rich ports of Java. But just months into the voyage, the Batavia struck a chain of coral islands off Australia's western coast, stranding its passengers on a barren atoll with little food or water. What followed wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a descent into madness, a real-life horror story where the line between civilization and savagery dissolved into the salt-stained rocks. Commanded by the inexperienced Francisco Pelsaert, the Batavia carried a toxic mix of personalities. Among them was Geronimus Cornelis, a bankrupt apothecary with a taste for radical philosophy and a chilling charisma. When Pelsaert and senior officers sailed off in a longboat to seek help, Cornelis seized control of the survivors left behind. What started as rationing soon spiraled into systematic slaughter. Cornelis and his followers, drunk on power and paranoia, murdered over 100 men, women, and children, drowning some in the surf, strangling others in their sleep, even luring victims to negotiations only to slit their throats. The islands became a killing field where daily life meant dodging death squads. Yet amid the horror, an unlikely resistance emerged. A group of soldiers, led by the quick-thinking Weeb Hayes, fled to a neighboring island and built a makeshift fort from coral blocks. When Cornwallis's men attacked, Hayes's ragtag defenders fought back with spears fashioned from wreckage, turning the tide in a series of brutal skirmishes. The climax came just as Pelsert returned with a rescue ship. Hayes's men captured Cornwallis mid-battle, dragging him before the astonished commander. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Pelsert ordered trials on the spot, hanging the worst offenders from the Batavia's broken masts. Cornwallis, unrepentant to the end, had his hands chopped off before his execution. Only a fraction of the original passengers survived to reach Java, their ordeal etched into history as one of the most gruesome maritime mutinies ever recorded. But the Batavia's legacy lingers in more than just blood-stained sand. The wreck, rediscovered in 1963, yielded treasures that tell another story: silver coins still stacked in their original chests, delicate porcelain untouched by centuries underwater, even a stone archway meant for a grand Dutch colonial gateway. These artifacts whisper of the ambition that launched the ship and the human frailty that doomed it. Today, the Batavia's bones rest in an Australian museum, a monument not just to greed and cruelty, but to the fragile threads that hold society together when the rules of civilization wash away with the tide. The murky waters of Matagorda Bay, Texas, hide a shipwreck with a story of ambition gone horribly wrong: the La Belle, a humble French frigate that became the linchpin in one of history's most disastrous colonization schemes. In 1684, explorer Robert Cavelier de La Salle set sail with 4 ships, dreaming of establishing a French empire at the mouth of the Mississippi. Instead, navigational errors, mutiny, and sheer bad luck scattered his fleet, leaving the La Belle stranded alone on the Texas coast. This 60-foot vessel, barely larger than a modern fishing boat, became the last hope for La Salle's desperate colonists as their new world unraveled into starvation and violence. What makes the La Belle extraordinary isn't its size or grandeur, but the treasure trove of everyday survival it left behind. When archaeologists excavated the wreck in the 1990s, they found muskets stacked like firewood, barrels of supplies from spoiled wine to medicinal mercury, even a single delicate pewter cup, perhaps a colonist's last luxury. Most haunting were the human footprints preserved in the bay's clay, pressed there as frantic survivors unloaded cargo onto makeshift rafts. These artifacts don't just tell a ship's story, they document a collapse in real time. La Salle's fatal miscalculation was assuming the Mississippi Delta lay near Texas. By the time the La Belle ran aground in 1686, his colony at Fort St. Louis was already failing, crops withered, tensions with local Karankawa tribes flared, and supplies dwindled. The ship became a lifeline, ferrying food from hunter-gatherer camps along the coast. But when a storm finally sank it, the colonists were left utterly stranded. The wreck's excavation revealed chilling evidence of their desperation. Dozens of axes and knives, traded or stolen from indigenous groups, suggest escalating conflict. A solitary child's shoe hints at families caught in the crisis. And then there's the cannon loaded and aimed toward shore, a silent witness to La Salle's growing paranoia before his own men murdered him in the wilderness. Today, the La Belle's ghostly hull sits reassembled in Austin's Bullock Museum, its ribs curving like the bones of a stranded whale. But its true legacy lies in the questions it forces us to ask. Was this a tale of bad luck or hubris, a doomed mission, or a colonization attempt that came terrifyingly close to altering North America's map? The La Belle's carcass whispers that history's turning points often hinge not on grand battles, but on forgotten ships and the ordinary people who sailed them to oblivion. Beneath the cerulean waves off the jagged cliffs of Antikythera, A Greek sponge diver in 1900 made a discovery that would rewrite history. Not gold or jewels, but a corroded lump of bronze cogs and dials that turned out to be the world's oldest known computer. The Antikythera Shipwreck, a Roman-era vessel lost around 60 BC, wasn't just another sunken trader. It was a floating gallery of Hellenic masterpieces and cutting-edge technology, carrying looted treasures from Greece's fallen cities to the villas of Rome's elite. Imagine the scene: marble statues of gods tangled in seaweed, bronze athletes frozen mid-motion, and amid the chaos, that enigmatic mechanism, a device so advanced it wouldn't be matched for another 1,000 years. What makes this wreck extraordinary isn't just the Antikythera mechanism. Though its intricate gearwork, capable of predicting eclipses and tracking Olympic cycles, still stuns scientists, but the snapshot it offers of a cultural tipping point. The ship's cargo was a testament to Rome's conquest of Greece. Bronze sculptures from Delphi sanctuaries, glassware from Alexandria's workshops, even furniture inlaid with ivory from Syria. Each piece spoke of an empire pillaging not just wealth but identity. The bronze Antikythera youth, recovered from the silt, captures this duality: his idealized Greek physique, later modified with a Roman-style haircut, a symbolic makeover for his new conqueror owners. Yet the real marvel lies in the contradictions. How could a civilization that produced the Antikythera mechanism, a device requiring precision machining akin to 18th century clockwork, also lose the knowledge to recreate it? The mechanism's fragments, painstakingly scanned in the 21st century, reveal inscriptions that functioned like an ancient user manual, with dials marking planetary positions and religious festivals. This wasn't just a tool, it was a philosopher's playground, blending astronomy, mathematics, and mysticism. The human stories buried here are equally compelling. Divers found skeletal remains amid the wreckage, including one dubbed Pamphilos after his name was found engraved on a cup. Analysis of his bones revealed a diet rich in seafood, suggesting he was a sailor, not a wealthy passenger. Nearby lay a cache of lead fishing weights and a carpenter's adze, humble objects that whisper of the crew's daily lives amidst their precious cargo. The Antikythera ship's sinking remains shrouded in mystery. Some speculate it fell victim to the island's treacherous currents. Others point to overloading, noting that replicas of its marble statues would have made the vessel dangerously top-heavy. But its legacy is undeniable. This wreck forces us to confront a paradox: that the ancient world could produce technology as sophisticated as the Antikythera mechanism, while still relying on ships barely more advanced than those of Homer's era. Every artifact salvaged from the seabed is a puzzle piece, hinting at a Hellenistic world far more connected and far more ingenious than we ever imagined. Off the coast of Sicily, where the Mediterranean's turquoise waves lap against the island's western shores, lies the shattered skeleton of a warship that once struck fear into Rome's heart, the Marsala Punic ship. Discovered in 1971 by an amateur archaeologist diving near the Agadi Islands, this Carthaginian vessel isn't just a shipwreck. It's a battlefield relic frozen in time from the First Punic War, a conflict that reshaped the ancient world. Dating to around 250 BC, its splintered timbers and scarred hull tell a story of naval innovation and desperate combat, offering us the rarest of glimpses into Carthage's once mighty fleet. What makes the Marsala ship extraordinary isn't just its age, but the sheer intimacy of its construction. Unlike Roman or Greek ships known from texts and mosaics, this vessel was built with techniques so distinct they read like a Carthaginian shipwright's manifesto. Its planks weren't fastened with nails or pegs, but sewn together with hemp rope, a method once thought too fragile for warships until this wreck proved otherwise. The stitching created flexible seams that could absorb the shock of ramming, a tactical advantage in the chaos of ancient naval combat. Even more intriguing, the wood itself, Lebanese cedar and oak, was deliberately left unseasoned. meaning builders felled the trees and shaped them while still green, relying on seawater to slowly cure the timber into hardness. This wasn't just craftsmanship, it was a calculated gamble against time. But the real revelation lies in the violence etched into its bones. Char marks streak across sections of the hull, likely from flaming arrows or pitchpots hurled by Roman attackers. One plank bears a deep, jagged gash, perhaps the killing blow from a Roman corvus, the infamous boarding bridge that turned sea battles into land fights. Most chilling of all, archaeologists found a soldier's spearhead wedged between two ribs of the frame, its iron tip still sharp after millennia underwater. This wasn't just a ship, it was a coffin for men who fought and died in the water, their stories preserved in splinters and rust. Personal touches humanize this warship. Scratches on the keel suggest it was dragged onto beaches repeatedly, likely for quick repairs between skirmishes. A ceramic ink pot found nestled in the wreckage hints at an onboard clerk recording supplies or orders. Then there's the graffiti, a Phoenician character crudely carved into a beam, possibly a crewman's mark or a ward against bad luck. These fragments paint a picture of sailors who weren't just faceless combatants, but individuals sweating through battles under the Mediterranean sun. The Marsala ship's fate mirrors Carthage's own tragic arc. Sometime during the Agadi Islands naval battle in 241 BC, the clash that ended the First Punic War, it was likely rammed, set ablaze, or swamped by waves, sinking with its secrets intact. Today, its reconstructed timbers sit in a Sicilian museum, a ghostly reminder that the Mediterranean's blue waters were once red with the blood of empires. And perhaps its greatest lesson isn't about war but survival. The sewing technique found here would later inspire Viking shipbuilders, proving that even in defeat, Carthage's maritime genius never truly drowned. Off the coast of Turkey's Yasiota Island, beneath layers of sand and centuries of silence, lies the skeleton of a Byzantine merchant ship that met its fate in the turbulent 4th century. Unlike grand warships or royal barges, this vessel was a working-class hero of the ancient seas, a humble trader carrying the lifeblood of the late Roman economy in its hold. When divers first uncovered its remains in the 1960s, they found a scene frozen in disaster. Stacks of amphorae still neatly aligned as if awaiting delivery, their contents long since dissolved into the Mediterranean, while scattered among them lay artifacts that whispered of a world in transition between pagan Rome and Christian Byzantium. The Yasiota ship was no luxury yacht. Roughly 60 feet long and built from pine and oak, its design was practical, a rounded hull for stability, a single mast rigged with a square sail, and a cargo capacity that could handle about 90 tons of goods. But what makes this wreck extraordinary isn't its size or grandeur, it's the snapshot it provides of a changing empire. The amphorae, stamped with marks from Cyprus and the Aegean, held staples like olive oil, wine, and garum. The pungent fish sauce Romans drenched on everything. Yet nestled beside these mundane containers were early Christian symbols, lamps etched with crosses, pilgrim flasks for holy water, and even a crude wooden box that may have held relics. This wasn't just a trade ship, it was a floating testament to an era when faith and commerce sailed side by side. Forensic archaeology paints a vivid picture of the ship's last moments. The hull shows signs of catastrophic failure, planks splayed outward near the stern, suggesting a violent impact with the island's hidden rocks. Some amphorae shattered on impact, their shards embedded in the seabed, while others remained eerily intact, their pointed bases still wedged into the ship's original wooden racks. The crew's personal belongings, a bronze steelyard for weighing goods, a cookpot crusted with centuries of salt, and a single leather sandal hint at lives interrupted mid-task. There were no skeletons, implying the sailors may have escaped the wreck, only to face an uncertain fate on the open sea. What truly sets the Yasiota wreck apart is its cargo's duality. The pagan and Christian artifacts found together reflect a Mediterranean world in flux. One amphora bears a Cairo symbol, the early Christian monogram, while another is marked with the name of a known pagan wine merchant. This wasn't an age of stark divides, but of overlapping beliefs, where a ship's hold could carry both the old world's olives and the new world's holy water. Even the ship's construction tells a story of adaptation, its planks fastened with iron nails in the Roman style, yet its rigging showing hints of emerging Byzantine techniques. Today, the Hanseatic ships' reconstructed timbers and artifacts fill museums, but their legacy ripples wider. This wreck forces us to rethink the 4th century not as a time of collapse but of quiet transformation. Every amphora salvaged from the seabed whispers the same truth. Empires rise and fall, but the sea's rhythms and the merchants who brave them endure. Lurking in the shallow waters near Portisolo, Italy, lies a shipwreck that shatters our assumptions about ancient art and war. Discovered in 1969 by a local pharmacist spearfishing just 30 feet below the surface, this 5th century BC Greek vessel isn't just another sunken trader. It's a floating crime scene, its scattered bronze statues and mangled anchors hinting at a clandestine operation during history's most infamous civil war. Picture the scene, divers brushing away sand to reveal not amphorae or tools but the broken limbs of gods, a life-sized bronze head, its inlaid eyes long since plundered by the sea, stares blankly from the seabed. Nearby, a muscular arm, once part of an athlete or warrior statue, lies twisted in the sediment. These weren't souvenirs or trade goods, they were masterpieces, likely ripped from temples or civic spaces during the Peloponnesian War's chaos. The ship's location, just off Italy's toe, suggests a desperate smuggling run Athenian operatives or opportunistic mercenaries spiriting loot westward as Sparta tightened its grip on Greece. What makes the Portisolo wreck extraordinary is the forensic trail left in its cargo. The bronze statues weren't merely stacked like firewood, they were carefully packed with wooden braces and padding, proving their value to the shadowy figures who shipped them. One nearly intact sculpture, the so-called Portisolo philosopher, reveals startling details. His finely chiseled beard and furrowed brow suggest a portrait of a real thinker, possibly a commemorative piece from a sacked city like Syracuse. But here's the twist. Metallurgical analysis shows the bronzes came from multiple workshops across the Greek world. This wasn't a single temple's plunder, but a curated collection of war trophies, a mobile gallery of conquest. The ship itself was a study in paradox, built for speed with a sleek hull, yet overloaded with tons of metal art. Its anchors, found tangled in the wreckage, show hasty cuts had the crew tried to lighten the load when disaster struck. The presence of both Attic black glaze pottery and Sicilian cooking vessels hints at a multicultural crew, perhaps mercenaries hired for this illicit run. Most telling of all, the complete absence of personal belongings. Whoever sailed this ship expected trouble, traveling light and leaving no traces. Today, the Portisolo bronzes gaze silently from museum cases, their empty eye sockets hiding secrets we'll never fully uncover. But their very existence rewrites history's margins, exposing the black market that thrived in war's shadow, where art became currency, and ships like this one were the getaway vehicles of antiquity's most brazen cultural heists. Deeper than time itself, beneath the waters off the tiny Greek island of Decode, lies a shattered secret from the dawn of seafaring, a wreck so ancient it predates the pyramids by 500 years. Discovered in 1975 by the legendary underwater explorer Peter Throckmorton, this 4,500-year-old shipwreck isn't just old. It's the oldest known intact wreck on the planet, a ghost from the early Helladic period when Crete's Minoan palaces were still centuries away from being built. What's left now is no grand hull or treasure chest, but something far more revealing. A hillside of broken clay, hundreds of simple pottery vessels scattered across the seabed like breadcrumbs leading back to humanity's first tentative steps across the Aegean. These aren't the ornate vases of classical Greece. The Decode's cargo is brutally utilitarian, thick-walled saucepans, plain storage jars, and bowl after bowl of the kind used for daily cooking. Yet their very simplicity screams volumes. These were the Tupperware of the Bronze Age, packed with olives, grain, and oil, likely shuttled between mainland Greece and the scattered Cycladic islands. The shapes tell the story. Some jars have telltale residues of resin, used to waterproof them for liquid transport, while others bear soot marks from being placed directly over fires. This wasn't luxury trade, it was the maritime equivalent of a grocery delivery, keeping early island communities fed and connected. But here's what flips assumptions on their head. The pottery isn't local. Petrographic analysis reveals clay sources from at least 3 different regions, including the eastern Peloponnese and the Attic coast. That means this humble vessel was part of a network, a web of barter and exchange stretching across 200 miles of open sea at a time when most of Europe was still hacking at the earth with stone tools. Even more telling, the absence of metal. No bronze, no tools, just stone anchors so primitive they're barely more than river rocks with holes drilled through them. This ship sailed in that razor-thin slice of history after pottery, but before widespread metallurgy, capturing a moment when civilization was still finding its sea legs. The wreck's quiet drama lies in what's missing. No whole timbers survive. The Mediterranean's worms saw to that, but the pottery's distribution paints a vivid last act. The jars cluster in a distinct pattern, suggesting the ship capsized suddenly, spilling its cargo in a single, catastrophic moment. Perhaps a squall caught its square sail broadside. Or maybe those stone anchors found nearby were dropped in panic as the crew fought to steady their vessel. We'll never know for sure, but the debris field freezes that terror in ceramic shards. Decode forces us to rethink what trade really meant in the ancient world. This wasn't empires moving luxury goods, but farmers and fishermen swapping necessities across treacherous waters. Every chipped bowl on that seabed represents a village's winter food supply, a mother's meal pot, or a brewer's attempt at beer. And in that unbroken chain of hunger and ingenuity, we see the true birth of the Mediterranean, not as a barrier but as the world's first highway. In the cobalt depths off Turkey's Cape Gelidonya, a clumsy fisherman's net snagged on something far more valuable than fish in 1954, the shattered remains of a ship that would rewrite our understanding of Bronze Age commerce. This wasn't just another wreck, it was a time capsule from 1200 BCE, its hull packed with 10 tons of copper ingots shaped like stretched ox hides, each one bearing the smelter's mark of ancient Cypriot workshops. When American archaeologist George Bass excavated the site in 1960, he didn't just find cargo. He uncovered the smoking gun of history's first global metal trade, proving Phoenician merchants were crossing the Mediterranean centuries earlier than previously believed. What makes the Gelidonya wreck extraordinary isn't just its age, but the forensic detective story hidden in its corroded artifacts. The ingots themselves are a metallurgical Rosetta Stone, some pure copper, others alloyed with tin to create ready-made bronze. This reveals an astonishing level of specialization. Rather than trading finished weapons or tools, these seafarers dealt in raw materials, supplying entire civilizations with the ingredients for their own industries. But the real revelation came from lead isotope analysis, tracing the copper's origins to Cyprus Troodos Mountains while the tin matched Afghan mines, exposing trade routes stretching from the Mediterranean to Central Asia. This ship was part of a supply chain so vast, it makes modern globalization look provincial. The personal items scattered among the cargo paint a vivid picture of life aboard this floating smelter. A merchant stone balance scale, its weights carved in the Egyptian Theban system, suggests transactions with Nile traders. A scarab bearing Pharaoh Amenhotep Roman III name hints at diplomatic connections or savvy marketing using exotic trinkets to grease deals. Most telling, the ship's stone anchors, carved from Rhodes limestone yet found alongside Cypriot pottery and Near Eastern tools. This wasn't a vessel from any single nation. but a multicultural trading hub where sailors, smiths, and merchants bartered in a dozen languages. Base's groundbreaking work on this wreck pioneered underwater archaeology itself. For the first time, divers mapped a site layer by layer using airlifts to gently clear sediment, revealing artifacts exactly where they fell 3,000 years ago. Amid the broken amphorae and corroded bronzeware, they found the crew's most personal possession, a bronze figurine of the god Reshef, a Phoenician deity of storms and metallurgy. Its presence aboard suggests these sailors prayed to the very forces that both powered their trade and threatened their lives: fire for smelting, wind for sailing. The Gelidonya's sinking remains a mystery. No signs of attack, just a hull shattered on the Cape's notorious reefs during a routine run between Cyprus and the Aegean. But its legacy is monumental. This humble trader proved the late Bronze Age wasn't an era of isolated kingdoms, but of interconnected markets where raw materials flowed as freely as ideas, setting the stage for everything from Phoenician purple dye monopolies to Athenian silver coinage. Every oxhide ingot salvaged from the seabed whispers the same truth. Civilization wasn't built in palaces or temples, but in the holds of ships like this one, where the real alchemy wasn't turning copper into bronze, but transforming chance encounters into enduring progress. Pulled from the peat bogs of Denmark's H. Hjortspring Mose in 1921, this vessel isn't just a boat. It's a war cry carved from oak. Dating to around 350 BC, the H. Hjortspring boat is the oldest known plank-built warship in Scandinavia, a sleek, 19-meter-long predator designed to glide through shallow marshes with the silence of a blade being drawn. But here's what chills the blood. It wasn't lost in battle or abandoned. This boat was a sacrifice, deliberately sunk in a bog alongside hundreds of weapons, spears, swords, even chainmail, all ritually broken before being offered to the gods. The craftsmanship alone shatters assumptions about Iron Age Europe. Unlike later Viking ships, the H. Hjortspring was stitched together with twisted cords of lime bark, its overlapping planks flexing like living skin to absorb the shock of waves. The design is almost organic, no nails, no metal reinforcements, just wood and fiber shaped into a lethal curve. Replicas prove it could carry 24 warriors at speeds surpassing 10 knots, its lightweight hull allowing lightning-fast raids upriver. But the real genius lies in its modularity. The entire vessel could be disassembled in hours, carried overland between waterways, then reassembled for surprise attacks. This wasn't just transportation, it was the ultimate guerrilla warfare tool. Now, let's talk about that cargo of carnage. When archaeologists unearthed the boat, they found it packed with enough weaponry to arm a small army: over 130 spearheads, 31 shields, and 10 swords, all deliberately snapped or bent. Some blades show signs of repeated use, notching from brutal combat, while others appear pristine, forged solely for this grim offering. The message is unmistakable: this was no ordinary sacrifice. It was a ritual of demilitarization, a community disarming itself before the gods in a display of devotion or desperation. The human element haunts this discovery. Among the wreckage lay a single child-sized leather shoe, raising eerie questions. Was this a votive offering, or did someone young witness or participate in this ceremony? Even more unsettling are the animal bones mixed with the weapons. Analysis reveals dogs, horses, and even a lone falcon. Their remains suggesting they weren't merely killed, but perhaps burned alive atop the boat before its sinking. The H. Hjortspring Bog wasn't just a grave for a ship. It was a theater of sacred violence, a place where the boundary between war and worship dissolved. What truly sets this boat apart is its legacy. The stitching technique used here, identical to methods found in Briggen, Norway 1,000 years later, proves Nordic shipbuilding traditions endured for millennia. Even more striking, the weapon styles match artifacts from as far away as the Celtic Alps, suggesting this wasn't just a local ritual but part of a pan-European warrior culture. The H-Jort springboat forces us to confront a brutal truth. Before the Vikings terrorized coasts, their ancestors were perfecting the art of sacred warfare, where boats weren't just tools of conquest, but offerings to gods who demanded steel and smoke. Today, its ghostly outline in the National Museum of Denmark whispers of an era when the line between chapel and chariot was drawn in bog water and blood. Buried beneath a grassy mound in Suffolk for over 1,300 years, the ghost of the Sutton Hoo ship lingers not in wood but in shadow. When archaeologists first brushed away the earth in 1939, they found no splintered planks or rusted nails. Instead, the soil itself remembered. The outline of an 89-foot-long vessel emerged as a dark stain in the sand. Its hull long since rotted away, but its silhouette preserved like a photograph taken by the earth. This was no ordinary grave. The sheer scale of the ship, painstakingly excavated as workers followed the rusted rivets that once held its planks together, marked it as the final resting place of someone who commanded not just men but kingdoms. The treasures unearthed from this sepulchre at sea rewrote English history. Golden belt buckles heavy with intricate patterns, silver bowls from Byzantium, and a lyre fit for a king's hall, all spoke of connections stretching across Europe. But nothing captured the imagination like the iconic Sutton Hoo helmet. Its iron framework, once clad in gleaming bronze and adorned with a mustachioed faceplate, wasn't just armor, it was a crown, a symbol of authority designed to transform its wearer into something more than mortal. The interlacing animal motifs coiled across its surface weren't mere decoration, they were a visual language, echoing the same sinuous designs found in Scandinavian and Celtic art, proof that Anglo-Saxon England was no backwater but a crossroads of cultures. What's haunting about Sutton Hoo isn't just what survived, but what didn't. The ship's organic materials, ropes, sails, even the king's body vanished without a trace, leaving only echoes. Forensic soil analysis revealed acidic conditions that dissolved flesh and bone but spared the metal grave goods, locking their secrets in place. The absence of a skeleton has fueled debates for decades. Was this Redwald, the East Anglian king who straddled pagan and Christian worlds, or someone else entirely, their name lost to time? The ship's alignment adds to the mystery, pointing east-west like a Christian burial, yet filled with symbols of the old gods. This wasn't just a funeral, it was a cultural threshold, a moment when worlds collided in the dark earth. The craftsmanship of the artifacts raises even deeper questions. The cloisonné jewelry, studded with garnets cut so precisely they could only have been shaped by Roman-era tools, hints at inherited techniques passed down through generations. The purse lid, with its intricate gold filigree, would have taken months to create, its geometric precision suggesting the work of master artisans who served royal courts. And then there's the ship itself, built in the clinker style of overlapping planks, a technique shared with Norse longships but refined here for a funeral rather than a raid. Was this vessel ever meant to sail, or was it constructed solely for this symbolic voyage into the afterlife? Perhaps the most poignant detail lies in the burial's theatricality. The ship was dragged over a mile from the River Deben to its final resting place, a feat requiring hundreds of laborers. Once positioned in the trench, it was filled with treasures, then buried under a mound visible for miles, a stage set for eternity. The message was clear: this king's power didn't end with death. It echoed in the landscape, a permanent reminder of authority carved into the earth itself. Sutton Hoo's legacy isn't just about the past. When the helmet was first reconstructed from its shattered fragments, conservators noticed something astonishing: tiny scratches on the inner rim, likely from the king's hair or a leather lining. In that instant, history collapsed from abstraction to intimacy. This wasn't just an artifact, it had been worn, adjusted, lived in. Today, as the ship's outline is laser-scanned and its treasures displayed under glass, we're left with a paradox. A burial meant to immortalize a ruler has instead immortalized the human hands that built it, the mourners who filled it, and the earth that held its secrets until we were ready to listen. On the windswept island of Saaremaa, Estonia, an excavation in 2008 uncovered a scene so brutal it froze time. 2 Viking ships buried side by side, their decks transformed into mass graves for 41 warriors slaughtered in the 8th century. The Salme ships aren't just archaeological finds, they're crime scenes from the Viking Age. Each skeletal remains whispering of a meticulously orchestrated massacre or a royal retinue's chilling farewell. Picture the scene: within the larger ship's belly, 34 men stacked like firewood, their bones intermingled with shattered swords and decapitated skulls. 7 more warriors occupied the smaller vessel, each body arranged with eerie precision. These weren't haphazard burials, they were messages carved in flesh and iron. Forensic analysis reveals horrors straight from saga verses. Many skeletons bear mortal wounds, sword cuts through collarbones, spear thrusts to pelvises, even a jawbone cleaved in half by what must have been a berserker's downward strike. Some corpses were stripped of armor before burial, their ribs still nicked by the blades that killed them. But here's the twist: despite the violence, the grave goods suggest these men were elites. Silver-hilted swords, game pieces made of whalebone, and even a die loaded with extra weight for cheating at dice, artifacts that scream privilege, not peasant soldiers. Chemical isotopes in their teeth confirm they weren't locals but Scandinavians, likely Swedes or Danes who'd sailed across the Baltic. Were they a raiding party ambushed far from home? Or the personal guard of a fallen king, sacrificed to serve him in death? The ships themselves deepen the mystery. Built in the classic clinker style with overlapping oak planks, they were seaworthy vessels repurposed as tombs, a practice otherwise unknown in Estonia. The larger ship stretched nearly 18 meters, large enough to carry 30 oarsmen, while the smaller one was a swift 12-meter escort. Both showed signs of hard use: patched hulls, worn oar holes, and traces of blood soaked into the wood. Most haunting is the positioning. The ships weren't buried parallel but stacked bow to stern like a nested pair, their prows pointing toward the sea as if ready for one final voyage. Then there's the enigma of the king. Among the piled dead, one skeleton stood out, a man in his 30s, buried atop a cushion of cloth and feathers, his sword placed diagonally across his chest in a gesture of high status. Beside him lay 2 decapitated heads, their skulls bearing the same genetic markers as the other warriors. Were these loyal bodyguards slain to accompany their leader? Or victims of a power struggle, their death sealing some long-forgotten political pact? The absence of any female remains or domestic items rules out a settlement disaster, leaving only 2 likely scenarios: a catastrophic battle against overwhelming odds, or a ritual killing so elaborate it mirrors the Norse myth of Odin's self-sacrifice on Yggdrasil. The Salme burial forces us to confront the Vikings' duality, their sophistication and savagery entwined like the serpentine patterns on their swords. These ships didn't just carry warriors, they carried an entire worldview, one where death in service to a leader could be as honorable as death in battle. Every rusted rivet and fractured femur whispers the same truth. The Baltic's waters were a stage for dramas far darker than sagas ever recorded. Today, their reconstructed skeletons stare hollow-eyed from Tallinn's museums, silent witnesses to a moment when the line between funeral and battlefield vanished beneath Estonian soil. The Bremen cog wasn't just a ship, it was the semi-truck of the medieval Baltic, a clinker-built behemoth that hauled everything from Flemish wool to Russian furs across stormy northern seas. Discovered in 1962 near Bremen's Weser River, this 1400s relic is the most intact cog ever found, its oak hull rising from the mud like a ghost from the Hanseatic League's golden age. Picture this, a round-bellied vessel 23 meters long, its plank-on-frame construction bristling with iron nails, designed to carry 200 tons of cargo while shrugging off North Sea gales. But what truly set cogs apart was their brute force simplicity. a flat bottom for shallow ports, high sides to deflect waves, and a single square sail that could be handled by a skeleton crew. This wasn't elegance, it was economics distilled into timber. What made the Bremen cog revolutionary lay beneath the deck. Unlike Viking longships with open holds, cogs featured a flush deck and watertight compartments. Medieval shipping containers keeping goods dry during months-long voyages. Archaeologists found traces of its cargo still clinging to the wood. Peppercorns from India, beeswax from Novgorod, even copper ingots stamped with the mark of Swedish mines. This vessel didn't just move goods, it connected the sprawling Hansa network, a maritime NATO of merchant guilds stretching from London to Bergen to Tallinn. The ship's very design reflected this cosmopolitanism. Its planks were Danish oak, its caulking German tar, and its rigging likely Dutch hemp. But the real genius was in the details. The Bremen cog's sterncastle wasn't just for navigation, it doubled as a fortress. Arrow slits built into its walls let crews repel pirates, while the aft-mounted rudder, a medieval innovation, gave unprecedented control in heavy seas. Even the hull's tar coating served dual purposes, waterproofing and pest control, keeping shipworms at bay. This was a vessel built by merchants for merchants, where every feature maximized profit and minimized risk. Yet the human stories emerge from the mundane. A reconstructed galley reveals sailors subsisted on salted herring and hardtack, their diet supplemented by beer so weak it doubled as drinking water. Graffiti carved into beams' crude faces and initials hint at board crews passing time between ports. Most telling, the ship's repaired keel, patched after grounding on some forgotten sandbar. This wasn't a museum piece, it was a workhorse battered but unbroken by decades of hard use. The Bremen cog's sinking remains a mystery. No signs of violence, just a hull cracked open near home port, perhaps overloaded or caught by a sudden squall. But its legacy is undeniable. When replicas like the Ubina von Bremen sailed modern seas, they proved these ships could cross oceans with shocking stability. The cog didn't just dominate Baltic trade, it laid the blueprint for everything from Dutch flights to East Indiamen, proving that in maritime history, the ugly ducklings often change the world. Buried beneath the mud of Newport's River Usk for over 5 centuries, the Newport ship isn't just a wreck. It's a medieval mystery wrapped in oak planks and iron nails. Discovered in 2002 during construction work on a riverside arts center, this 50-foot-long merchant vessel dates to the mid-1500s, a time when Wales was both a hub of maritime trade and a battleground in the bloody Wars of the Roses. But here's what baffles archaeologists. The ship was deliberately abandoned, its hull carefully dismantled and left to rot in the shallows, as if someone intended to return but never did. What makes this wreck extraordinary isn't just its preservation thanks to the Usk's oxygen-starved silt. Its timbers survived nearly intact, but its cargo of contradictions. The ship's hold bore traces of Portuguese wines, evidenced by sediment-stained clay jars called amphorae, yet its construction screams Northern Europe. Dendrochronology reveals the oak came from the Basque country, felled between 1445 and 1460, while its iron fastenings match those used in Bristol and Brittany. This was no local trader, it was a transnational workhorse hauling luxury goods across the Bay of Biscay's treacherous waters. Then there's the political subtext. The ship's final voyage coincided with the climax of the Wars of the Roses, that brutal chess match between Lancastrian and Yorkist factions. Newport was a Lancastrian stronghold, and records hint at a desperate scramble for resources as Tudor loyalists fortified against Yorkist sieges. Was this ship commandeered for its timber, its cargo, or even its crew? Some historians speculate it was part of a shadow fleet, smuggling men or supplies for Henry Tudor's eventual march to Bosworth Field. Others point to its dismantled state, no signs of fire or battle damage suggesting a planned conversion, perhaps into a riverside warehouse or barracks that never materialized. The human stories linger in the details. A single leather shoe, curled and cracked by time, was found wedged between planks, likely lost during hurried repairs. A pewter badge depicting St. Nicholas, patron saint of sailors, hints at the crew's superstitions. Most poignant, a cache of Portuguese coins hidden near the mast step, someone's secret stash, forgotten in the chaos of abandonment. Today, the Newport ship's reassembled frame dominates a custom-built museum, its ribs curving like the skeleton of some medieval sea dragon. But the bigger puzzle remains. Why was such a valuable vessel left to rot? Whether victim of war, economic collapse, or some long-forgotten feud, this ship forces us to confront history's loose ends, the stories that don't wrap up neatly but dissolve into the tidal mud of time. Lurking beneath the waves off Korea's Shinnon coast lies a shipwreck that captures a dynasty in freefall, the shattered remains of a 14th-century Chinese trader, its hull bursting with treasures that would never reach their destination. Discovered by a humble fisherman in 1975, the Shinnon shipwreck isn't just a time capsule from the Yuan dynasty. It's a crime scene from one of history's most chaotic maritime collapses. Picture this: 20,000 ceramic pieces, delicate celadon vases, lotus-adorned bowls, even whimsical incense burners shaped like ducks, all jumbled together with 70,000 coins spilling across the seabed like a dragon's scattered hoard. This wasn't a leisurely trade voyage, it was a desperate flight frozen mid-disaster. What makes this wreck extraordinary isn't just its cargo, but the political storms swirling around it. The ship went down between 1323 and 1332, precisely as the Yuan dynasty was unraveling under the Red Turban Rebellion, a peasant uprising that turned China's rivers red with blood. Those coins most bear the reign marks of Emperor Wenzong, whose regime was imploding as militias burned ports and severed trade routes. The ceramics tell the same story. Kiln marks trace them to Longquan, a production hub later sacked by rebels. This ship wasn't just carrying goods, it was ferrying the last gasp of an empire's luxury economy, a floating Hail Mary by merchants scrambling to sell their wares before the chaos reached the coast. Forensic archaeology reveals the human drama behind the disaster. The celadon wasn't packed for safe transit, pieces were nested without padding, suggesting a frantic, last-minute loading process. Some bowls still bear scribbled price tags in ink, likely added in haste at the dock. Even the ship's construction hints at cut corners, mismatched timbers, and hastily patched hull seams, evidence of a vessel pressed into service when better options were unavailable. And then there's the chilling absence of personal items: no combs, no gaming pieces, just a single bronze mirror found near the stern. Was the crew ordered to abandon belongings to maximize cargo space? Or did they never board at all, leaving the ship to be manned by desperate conscripts? The wreck's Korean location adds another layer of intrigue. Historical records mention Yuan loyalists fleeing to Goryeo, Korea as the rebellion spread, but the Shinnon's course suggests a different mission. Its cargo includes lacquerware stamped with official Yuan seals, possibly diplomatic gifts, or even imperial assets being smuggled to safety. The presence of Persian cobalt on some ceramics hints at Middle Eastern trade connections the dynasty was struggling to maintain. This ship wasn't just a merchantman, it was a thread in the unraveling tapestry of Mongol-controlled maritime trade, a network stretching from Hangzhou to Hormuz. Most haunting are the small tragedies preserved in the silt. A celadon cup, its rim chipped during the sinking, still cradles the sediment of whatever tea or wine it last held. A twisted nest of coins fused together by centuries underwater tells of a money bag that ruptured as the ship plunged. These details transform the Shinnon from an archaeological site into a visceral moment. The split second when the waves won, and the Yuan dynasty's dreams of recovery sank beneath them. Today, the salvaged artifacts fill museums in Seoul and Gwangju, but their true message lingers beneath the surface. The Shinnon shipwreck isn't just about what was lost, It's about the desperation that precedes collapse, the way empires, in their death throes, often dispatch one last ship, hoping against the tide of history. Every waterlogged coin and salt-crusted vase whispers the same warning. Even the mightiest dynasties can drown. In the turquoise shallows of the Philippines' Pandonan Island, a fisherman's net snagged on something far more valuable than sea base in 1993. The shattered remains of a 15th-century trading vessel so laden with porcelain, it was practically a floating art gallery. The Uluburun Shipwreck isn't just another sunken trader. It's a treasure map of Asia's forgotten porcelain highways, its hold packed with over 4,700 ceramic pieces from Vietnam's kilns to China's imperial workshops. Picture this: celadon dishes still stacked in their original straw packing, blue and white Ming Dynasty bowls painted with lotus blossoms so delicate they might have been brushed yesterday, and Vietnamese stoneware jars crusted with centuries of salt, all proof that long before European galleons dominated these waters, Southeast Asia was the epicenter of a thriving maritime art trade. What makes this wreck extraordinary isn't just the volume of ceramics, but the stories they carry in their glazes. The Vietnamese pieces, many from the Chu Dao kilns near Hanoi, bear intricate underglaze blue designs mimicking Chinese motifs, a deliberate knockoff strategy for buyers who couldn't afford Ming luxury prices. Yet here's the twist: some of these copies were so finely crafted, they rivaled their Chinese counterparts, revealing Vietnam's emergence as a ceramic powerhouse. Meanwhile, the genuine Ming porcelains marked with rain dates from the Xuan and Zhengtong emperors show something even more surprising: cracks repaired with drilled holes and metal stitches. These weren't pristine showroom pieces, they were working wares lovingly mended after chips or cracks, proving that even broken beauty had value in 15th century markets. The ship itself was a marvel of hybrid design, built from Philippine hardwoods but using Southeast Asian lashed lug techniques where planks are fastened with fibrous ropes rather than nails. It represented the perfect vessel for island hopping trade. Its shallow draft allowed access to tiny coastal villages, while its compact size, around 25 meters, made it agile enough to dodge pirates and typhoons. But the real genius lay in the cargo organization. Archaeologists found ceramics packed in layers separated by organic padding leaves, rice husks, even woven bamboo mats, a prehistoric version of bubble wrap that kept fragile goods intact across thousands of miles of open ocean. Then there's the human element. Among the ceramics, divers uncovered a single bronze spoon, its bowl worn thin from years of stirring communal pots, a handful of glass beads, likely trade currency for minor deals. Most haunting, a cluster of earthenware cooking pots still smudged with soot proof the crew prepared meals aboard, perhaps sharing stories under the stars as their fragile cargo shifted gently in the hold. The Uluburun wreck's sinking remains a mystery, no signs of violence, just a hull cracked open on the reef, possibly during a moonless night. But its legacy reshapes our understanding of Asian trade. This wasn't just commerce, it was cultural cross-pollination where Vietnamese potters borrowed Chinese designs, Philippine sailors navigated by monsoon winds, and broken porcelain got second lives in faraway homes. Every bowl salvaged from the seabed whispers the same truth. Globalization wasn't invented by Europeans, it was perfected by ships like this one, gliding silently between monsoons, their holds brimming with art. Off the sun-drenched coast of southeastern Spain, the Bajo de la Campana shipwreck lies like a submerged time capsule from the heyday of Phoenician maritime empire. Discovered in the 1950s by local fishermen and later excavated by archaeologists, this 7th century BCE wreck isn't just a collection of artifacts, it's a smoking gun proving the Phoenicians dared to sail far beyond the safety of the Mediterranean, venturing into the treacherous Atlantic to forge trade networks that shaped the ancient world. Picture this: a storm strikes near modern-day Cartagena, sending this sturdy vessel loaded with tusks of African ivory, chunks of Baltic amber and ingots of Cornish tin plummeting to the seabed, where it would remain untouched for over 2,600 years. What makes this wreck extraordinary isn't just its age, but the geographic audacity etched into its cargo. The ivory, sourced from North African elephants, reveals trade routes stretching across the entire Mediterranean, while the amber, unmistakably from the Baltic, proves the Phoenicians were middlemen in a supply chain linking the frigid north to the sun-baked Levant. But the real game changer, the tin. Analysis of the ingots traced them to mines in Cornwall, England, a staggering distance from the Phoenician homeland of modern-day Lebanon. This wasn't coastal hopping, it was a high-stakes Atlantic run, likely following ancient Bronze Age trade paths to secure the era's most critical commodity, the metal that, when alloyed with copper, produced bronze. Without ships like this one, entire civilizations would have ground to a halt for lack of tools and weapons. The craftsmanship of the artifacts tells another story. Among the wreckage, divers found intricately carved ivory plaques depicting griffins and sphinxes motifs borrowed from Assyrian and Egyptian art, then reimagined by Phoenician artisans. This wasn't just raw material being shipped, it was value-added artwork, proof the Phoenicians didn't just move goods, but transformed them into luxury items for the elites of Tartessos, their wealthy Iberian trading partners. Even the ship's construction speaks of cultural fusion. The hull used Lebanese cedar for key structural elements, but incorporated local Iberian oak for repairs, suggesting a crew so far from home they had to improvise with whatever timber they could scavenge. Then there's the human drama preserved in the silt. A stone anchor, its rope long since dissolved, still points toward the shore as if the crew's last act was to try saving their vessel. A set of balance scales so finely calibrated they could weigh fractions of an ounce, hints at the meticulous bartering that took place on board, most poignant. A single glass bead, its cobalt blue undimmed by centuries underwater, likely a trinket meant for trade, or perhaps a sailor's keepsake from a distant port. The Bajo de la Campana wreck forces us to rethink the Phoenicians' legacy. These weren't just merchants, they were the original globalists stitching together continents with a network so vast it functioned like an ancient internet. Every ivory tusk and amber chunk salvaged from the seabed whispers the same truth. Long before GPS or steel hulls, these sailors looked at the roiling Atlantic and didn't see a barrier, they saw a highway. Off the jagged coast of Eritrea's Daulak archipelago, the Black Assarca shipwreck lies like a silent witness to Africa's forgotten maritime empire. Discovered in 1995 by local fishermen, this 6th century vessel isn't just a relic, it's a Rosetta Stone of Aksumite ambition, revealing how a kingdom nestled in the highlands of Ethiopia dominated the Red Sea's trade routes like a medieval Venice. Picture this, a ship built from African mahogany and teak, its hold bursting with Indian glassware, Roman coins, and Byzantine amphorae, all destined for Axum's bustling ports before a storm sent it plunging onto the coral reefs of Assarca Island. What makes this wreck extraordinary isn't just its cargo, but how it rewrites Africa's role in ancient globalization. The Aksumite kingdom, often overshadowed by Rome and Persia in history books, was a maritime powerhouse with its own writing system, coinage, and a navy that patrolled from Arabia to East Africa. The Black Assarca's artifacts prove it. Bronze scales marked with Jez script Axum's language, silver drachmas minted in Alexandria stamped with Christian crosses, and most strikingly, fragments of Indian roulette pottery, its distinctive dotted patterns tracing a direct line to the subcontinent's workshops. This wasn't just trade, it was a 3-continent supply chain orchestrated from Axum's hilltop palaces. The ship's construction tells its own story of cultural fusion. Its planks were fastened with kwa rope made from coconut husks, a technique common in India and Sri Lanka, while the hull's curvature mirrored Roman designs adapted for monsoon winds. Even the ballast stones were imported, volcanic basalt from Yemen's highlands, strategically placed to stabilize the ship during rough crossings to India. But the real clue to Axum's reach lies in the personal items. A sailor's wooden comb with Axumite geometric carvings was found beside a Tamil-language gambling die, suggesting a crew as diverse as the goods they carried. Then there's the mystery of its sinking. The wreck's position wedged between two coral heads hints at a nighttime catastrophe, perhaps a missed navigational marker in storm-tossed seas. Unlike Mediterranean shipwrecks with their skeletons and weapons, Black Assarca's human traces are subtler. A single bronze cooking pot still coated with residue of sorghum stew, a type of grain staple in Eritrea today. Was this the crew's last meal, or evidence of coastal pilots boarding to guide the ship through the Dolak's treacherous channels? The wreck's true legacy lies in its timing. By the 6th century, Axum was at a crossroads. Its control of the Red Sea trade under threat from Persian navies and the rise of Islam. The Black Assarca's final voyage may have been part of a desperate push to maintain Axum's grip on the spice and ivory routes. Its failure, sealed by that fatal storm, marked the beginning of the kingdom's slow fade from maritime dominance. Today, the salvaged artifacts in Massawa's museums aren't just beautiful objects. They're fragments of an alternate history where an African empire's ships once dictated terms to Rome and India alike, their sails vanishing into the horizon like ghosts on the Red Sea's shimmering waves. From the sacred solar barges of Egyptian pharaohs to the storm-battered cogs of medieval merchants, these 35 ancient ships paint a breathtaking mosaic of human ingenuity. Each vessel, whether a Phoenician trader laden with Baltic amber or a Viking longship stitched with warrior ambition, carved its own unique wake across history. The Khufu Ship's celestial symbolism reminds us that ships were more than transport. They were bridges between worlds, both physical and spiritual. The Uluburun's multicultural cargo whispers of Bronze Age globalization, while the humble Kyrenia's patched hull testifies to the unsung merchants who kept civilizations afloat. Warships like the Nidam boat weren't just tools of conquest. They were floating revolution, birthing designs that would dominate seas for centuries. Consider how these ships redefined possibility. The Dover boat's sewn plank construction proved prehistoric mariners dared open waters, while the Quanju's bulkheads showcased Song dynasty engineering centuries ahead of its time. The Antikythera mechanism's recovery from a Roman wreck shattered assumptions about ancient technology, and the Belitung's Chinese porcelain in an Arab How rewrote the map of medieval trade routes. Even failures like the Vasa became lessons, their wreckages serving as grim reminders that hubris sinks empires as surely as storms sink ships. Yet for all we've uncovered, the ocean still guards countless secrets. Imagine what undiscovered wonders lie beneath the silt, perhaps a lost fleet of Minoan galleys, or a Ming treasure ship dwarfing even the mighty Nanhai No. Every shipwreck is a time capsule waiting to crack open, offering new clues about forgotten migrations, failed colonies, or technological marvels lost to time. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which of these ancient marvels captured your imagination? Was it the Oseberg's artistic grandeur, the Santa Maria's accidental colonialism, or the mysterious ritual sinking of the Georgespring boat? Share your favorite in the comments or speculate about what legendary vessels might still emerge from the depths. After all, history isn't just written in books, it's etched in keels and scattered across seabeds, inviting us to keep exploring.